What's happening in the canine industry? For all the latest news, views, and expert opinions, stay right here for the Canine Paradigm. You'll hear from industry leaders, experts, doyens of the industry, learned colleagues, movers and shakers, and the odd randy guest. Get the latest insights and expert advice from both here and abroad from the people in the know. Now, here are your hosts, Glenn Cook and Pat Stewart. And I'm Lofty Fulton, and I'm out of here.
Glenda?
Yes.
We have to do a new ad.
We do.
It's a solemn time. Mm-hmm. Our long-time sponsor of the show, George Kittredge,
Yes.
very, very sadly passed away. And we formerly used to advertise for him his Rowdy Hound boxes.
We did.
So we don't actually know what's happened with Rowdy Hound boxes. You know anything about that?
I looked at the website. It said that they're recalibrating since their founder and boss has passed. But nonetheless, I think that you and I want to honour the memory of George Kittredge anyway. He was a friend to both of us, a hell of a good guy, and he supported us almost immediately. He was on board through and through, and I just don't want any of us to forget George. He was a terrific human being.
So we intend to continue to advertise Rowdy Hound, even though we don't know what's going on with them.
Yep.
In the hopes that they keep going, and that can be a bit of George's legacy that we're able to continue to promote.
I hope so.
In checking it out, we had a look to see, because we're not real good with the sponsorship. So we had a look to see who's actually paying for sponsorship. And we have a list of people to tell you that we support. And the first is our sugar mama, Barbara de Groot.
She's been with us from the start as well. Barbara's been an absolute staple in our...
She's a gem.
She is a gem.
She has a business.
She does. From the Heart Dog Training.
From the Heart Dog Training.
Yeah.
You can check it out. But she supports us as much and more than anybody ever has. So we appreciate you very much, Barbara. Another person who's supported us from the start.
The Einzelwiener.
Einzelwiener.
The Bullfed.
The Bullfed.
Yep.
It's where I get all my stuff.
Yeah.
It is, truly. It's where I get all my dog gear. If I need something, Jason's my first point of call. I don't use his shit website. He has a website. It's dog shit. I just message him directly. You guys probably should use his shit website, but I don't.
Yeah, because you don't want to message him directly and get his grumpy ire of the day.
Yeah, but do it. Get all your dog stuff from Jason. He's got everything you need. He's got all the shit that you need to train a dog for realty.
Everybody who comes to seminars and looks at meals and asks me meals questions, ask Jason.
Yeah.
Jason can point you in the right direction for getting the meal that's best suited for you.
I really like his leashes. I'm a big fan of his leash pack. That's why I sort of convinced him to do it. But anyway, get your stuff from Einzelwiener.
Yep.
Do you know who has a fantastic website and ships internationally?
My wife?
Your wife,
Yeah.
Canine Pharmaceuticals.
I couldn't imagine her not having a good website, how much of a perfectionist she is.
Well, the products are amazing. My dog merely being alive is a walking testimonial to that. My dog, who I've retired numerous times and has come out of retirement when I've managed to get his body back to healthy. And a big part of that is related to Canine Pharmaceuticals. So check it out, everybody.
I could say so many nice and biased things about Canine Pharmaceuticals and my wife, but what I will say is ignore me. Just look at testimonials. The testimonials speak for themselves. That's where the field trials are working. What makes Narelle's day, and mine as well, is when people are emailing in and sending messages of, well, primarily people have had no hope in the past because just everything that they were trying wasn't working, and now it is. And that is the testament that something is actually really working. And the other thing which I will add, one of the things that Narelle's told me in the past is dogs are incapable of understanding the placebo effect.
Oh, that's a good point.
So you can fake it on a human, but you can't fake it on a dog.
I never thought about that before. That's actually a really good point.
Well, my wife's actually a very smart person.
There you go.
So she's told me that humans are subject to the placebo effect where dogs are not. So it either works or it doesn't on dogs.
There you go. That makes total sense.
Yep.
There's one other person who puts a fair amount of work into this show.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah. Funny about that.
And I have a digital product that you can buy. If you go to my website, seriousdogbusiness.com, right now I've got 2 courses available to you. The Overview, which is a small course where you could learn how I teach.
Yep.
But the other one is the Wave Tops, which is a bigger course. It's everything I know about dog training. Well, it's not everything. It's a lot of what I know about dog training.
Yeah,
Check it
terrific.
out.
Yeah.
$500 dues. That's all it's going to cost you.
I recommend it when people are saying, what do I do? How do I get in the industry? I recommend them to your course.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks,
Yeah.
sir. All right, on with the show. Welcome back to the Canine Paradigm. I'm your host, Pat Stewart, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Glenn Cook.
Here we are for another one.
How are you, sir?
I'm well.
Back from another week with Red Team.
Yeah, we did another Red Team one. as you and I were just waffling about before we actually turned the record button on, we got to work with a couple of people from New South Wales Police and SOA. We were out at the Army base with them, and they're really cool people. They're fun to work with, intelligent, insightful. The standard of the dogs is actually really good. Like the obedience the dogs are doing, the off-lead capability of the dogs, doing directional work at large distances. Fantastic. Not only are they doing terrific work with the dog training, but they're cool people to work with as well, and nice people, like really ahead of the game sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think I've made mention of this several times, but it warrants being said once again. I remember looking at the standard in some of the services in Australia many years ago, and I'm going back decades, and it used to always concern me because as civilians, and this is going to sound really arrogant, but it's true, it's only on comparable basis, but as civilians, our dogs were at a better standard than what we could see in the services. And I understand from conversations with you and many other people that sometimes people don't see this as a long-term career. It's just something they get in and get out and get in and get out. So they're washing people regularly. So the dogs then get a new handler, a new style of training, and that cycle goes on and on and on. So that explains quite a lot. And that means that, there is a reason for that sort of thing happening. But when you look at it now, the comparison to what they're doing now versus, let's say, 20 odd years ago, now they're at a standard which is comparable with the rest of the world. You wouldn't go overseas and go, oh, our people are so disadvantaged or so different or behind the curve. You look at them and going, yeah, the guys in Australia, the good agencies who are doing the work and investing in their team and putting the resources forward for them, they're at a standard which is comparable to the rest of the world. Like these dogs would legitimately find homemade explosives, and do the work that they're supposed to do. So I guess for me as a civilian, it's a way of me saying thank you, because I don't feel compromised when I'm taking any form of transport or going to a venue, knowing that our agencies are out there like scanning for these sort of things, and the dogs are competent and the handlers are competent as well. So thanks very much, guys. I know people like SOA and even police groups and so forth, not only are they dog handlers, but they've also got to be professionals in the army as well, or professionals in the police force. So they've still got to be police officers. They've still got to be army people. They've still got to do relevant army jobs and fit that all in. And they do it with so much passion and vigor. Like I said, the competency level is exemplary. So thanks, guys. I'm really proud of you, and I hope to see you guys on future upcoming courses with Red Team. It was wonderful. I love it. I love spending the time watching them and develop and seeing how quickly the dogs pick up on odor.
Yeah, I'm critical of army training a lot, having spent a lot of time doing it. There's much that could be improved in certain ways, but one thing the Australian Army definitely has done a great job of is our explosive detection dog handlers and the dogs. Their course is exceptional, and they put out an incredible product. So, whenever I work with those guys and I work with the CERs, the combat engineer regiments, I'm always very impressed. In fact, I usually tell them like, hey, I'm going to see what I can add in terms of dog training for you guys, but your actual detection work is excellent. I don't really have much to offer them, or if anything, really, they're very, very good. I think, I can expand on it a little bit. The thing with armies, and this is sort of true everywhere in the world of all successful armies, is that change has to be slow. It's why one of the reasons for me, say, I've had numerous people ask me with the courses that I teach and stuff like that, like, why don't I get it accredited? Like, why don't I turn it into a real course? Why don't I try and plug it into an RTO and turn it into a real thing? And my answer is always the same, is first of all, that creates a lot of paperwork that I don't want to do. But second, it really significantly reduces your ability to stay dynamic. And I think that's one of the things that we as civilians are very able to do, is be extremely dynamic. When you work for yourself, you say that you're training dogs to sell for detection purposes, or you're training pet dogs at a facility, whatever, you have your own internal procedures. And if you're a small company, you're not like yet at a big company that's been franchised or something like that. But if you're a small company, maybe you are the boss, maybe you are the owner. Or if your employees have a direct line to whoever's considered the training director or the owner if need be, you can change quickly and easily, and you can find new things, and you can say, hey, I think we should pivot. I think that there's this cool technique that I went to a seminar and saw, and I want to incorporate it into our training. Or, you can revolutionize training in a day. You can be like, hey, we've decided that for whatever reason, we're going to change the sequence in which we teach things or whatever. And that's really easy to do, right? Like you can just do that dynamically and there's no one to answer to other than your happy clients. That is absolutely not the case once you involve the government, right? Like once you get a course accredited, and especially if you are the government, right? Like it's the same in, most armies around the world, but like for sure in Australia, the army here is an RTO, like it's a registered training organization. It is a school. It is a place where you can go to learn, and it's bound by the same legalities that all schools in Australia are bound by, whether we're talking about a kid's primary school or all the way up to a TAFE or a university, some sort of tertiary education. That's what Army is, right? Because they're teaching people a lot of skills. So all of the courses have what's called a TMP, like a training management plan. And it's a book, right? Because the Army, like all things, it has to be able to survive mass casualty events. So like what really they need is that even if all of our subject matter experts in this field suddenly die, right? Like if we no longer have access to them, we need to be able to pull out the book and relearn this stuff from scratch, right? We have to have it written down in a way where if there's nobody to teach it to me, because that's a reality of the army, right? Like people can you can find yourself in a position where the guy who can teach you the thing is too busy doing the thing and he needs your support. So you then have to teach yourself to do the thing so that you can go out, round out and reinforce him. So as a result, army courses are very fleshed out, right? Like every lesson is set in stone. There's a training plan, there's a light pro, there's a whole lot, so that in the worst case scenario, you can teach yourself. If you absolutely have to, you can go through the bouncing ball yourself and you can learn this stuff. That means that you create a lot of thickness, a lot of throughput, and the stuff that you understand, you'll understand really well. But it also means that the army in its learning process, it's very difficult to be dynamic. And they have, like, especially within the SF community, so like SOA is that, for people who haven't heard us explain it before, SOA is the Special Operations Engineers Regiment, and they are attached to SOCOM, and they live at the same base as my old unit at 2 Commando, and they work closely with those guys. They are, if there's a Special Forces team going out to do whatever and they want to take a dedicated explosive detection dog, it's from SOA that dog will come. And the handler as well then accompanies those guys. So while there is some like stop gaps, they do have the ability to bolster training. They can add to training. They still do have to do their assigned course, right? You have to get those ticks in the boxes. You have to fulfill the duties of the government requirements of the RTO. And then you can add extra to that. But that base layer of education, it cannot change. And so that's kind of been the issue, I think, in the past, is that when the army isn't looking externally and saying like, hey, there's other cool information out there, who's got it, who's got what, we can add that to what we already know. When they're not doing that, they're stuck with what they already know. And that can very quickly and easily become outdated, because updating that is really difficult. Like, trust me, I've been a person trying to make modifications to an army TMP, and it is not an easy thing to do, because like there's just layers of bureaucracy that have to be gone through. And never mind even the difficulty just administratively, the paperwork of it. Army doesn't like to just change with the wind. As civilians, we can be like, what's the flavor of the day? What are people up to? What's popular at the moment? The army does not work that way. The army works in terms of like, we are a no-fail capability. If it works, we stick with it. We don't do the fancy shit. We are the no-frills product. And so that's why in the past, prior to social media, prior to availability of that sort of information, now an army dog handler or the people in charge of that, they can't help but be bombarded with other information from outside of their space. But 20 years ago, that was the case, right? Like you got taught by the guys who taught you, and they got taught by the people who did the same course a year earlier or whatever. So the knowledge was very stagnant. And it's not that they can't put extra stuff on top of that knowledge. It's just that it has to be that base. And what I have seen, and this is true of army sort of across the board, is that, you know, not just in dog spaces, but even when I was in, 10 years ago, we were inviting in civilian pistol coaches to teach us how to be better on the gun. We still have to do our course. We still have to tick all those boxes. But then at the back end of that, we can get in people who are like, cutting edge of competing in triple gun or IPSC and stuff like that, and go like, hey, you got anything to offer us? And you can add to what we have already taught ourselves, but you can't create a new foundation for us, where our foundation has to be the same. And so we see that now in dogs. But for sure, like the army standard, in Australian Army, the standard of their detection dogs is exceptional. I'm always impressed by them whenever I work with them.
with the Army side of things, as far as the operations goes, you can speak with authority on that because you dedicated a large part of your life working in that field and being deployable and deployed and blah, blah, blah. Whereas, as I've stressed before to people, I've always been a civilian. I've never made any connotation. I don't dress up like an Army guy. Even when I go on the course, I don't wear camos or pretend that I've been some operator of some type. I've worked in EDD before, like I used to do all the dock work and everything. So for many years, I used to travel up and down doing venues and doing P&O cruises and blah, blah, blah. So I have experience in it. I have been an explosive dog handler and trainer. It doesn't make me the world's leading authority. And in many cases, I'm still yet to meet those people. There are professionals and there are people who are cycling in and out who are marvelous at these sort of things. And I take my lead from them, like if they've got people like Cameron Ford, for argument's sake. Cameron's very dynamic in accessing relevant science and scientists who are on the cutting edge of working, like Dr. Paula Tiedemann and Megan Morn and many of these people that came to the conference when you and I were there and so forth. Like, these people are amazing. Like, they are constantly looking at what's new, what's viable, what are dogs actually learning, and they're actually spending resource money into looking into it. So it actually benefits us when we get out onto that workplace. And like you, mate, you finished up on that sentence where you said you can't help but be impressed with some of the work that these Army guys are doing with their dog units. It is only getting better. And likewise, I'm equally impressed. I think I just sit back and think, wow, you guys are really paying attention. If you had a competition, you could put these guys in it, and I think that they would fare well with what they're actually doing. Their work is nice. Like I said, I'm full of compliments for what I actually saw because we put them under the hammer, like we tested the dogs. We did lots of different things. We took them into scenarios that are different than their workplace, things that their dogs would not normally do because it's different from the battlefield tactics or things that they're doing when they're deployable. Nonetheless, we still said, all right, well, let's make things a little easy here and a little difficult there and very difficult here on odors that they hadn't been across before or that they'd had been over quite some time ago. And the dogs performed really well because the handling and the education that the dogs have received was exceptional in the past. So I know I'm sort of giving them these big glow ups, but they deserve it because they were doing really well. As I said, I always enjoy and love working with consummate professionals, no matter what field they're working in. I'm always happy if I can assist and I can offer some knowledge bomb here or there, or even just be in the background and get to be a part of a cool team of people working together. It's a bit of a buzz. I wanted to give a shout out to Greg Caddy too, who was formerly a dog handler in the Army. I think he worked with SOA. Greg's a great guy, very good friend of mine, and love watching his work and even the development that he's done with some of the dogs that he's raised and trained. And some of the agencies have actually taken on the dogs and they're working exceptionally well as well. I get to work with a cool group of guys. Like Andrew is exceptional. He doesn't have any dog knowledge. He professes that at the start. And when he puts up that Venn diagram of how our capabilities come together, he says, I am Army, but I'm focused in officer training and in chemistry. Greg is Army, but he's also a dog trainer. And Glenn is civilian, but he specializes in a lot of things with dog training. So together we have a capability that we can tick off all sections. So, mate, it's fun. It's great. I get to do cool guy stuff, work with some great men and women, watch them gush over what they're doing and then come home and I feel like, I've done something productive. I've done something that makes a difference and helps not only them with what they need to do and the work that they need to do, but also knowing that you played a role in something that may have an impact on civilian safety. I certainly feel safer when I see it and I experience it because then I think, these guys can definitely tick the box off HME, which is the real impending threat in modern day warfare. And that's what you can walk away from that saying, yes, they've done it. Their dogs are detecting it. They're doing really well on it. Well done, you. Thanks for your service.
I really appreciate that because I feel the same every time I get to work with police and military. It wasn't my choice to leave the Army. If I hadn't broken my back, I'd still be in the Army. So it does feel nice to contribute meaningfully from time to time. If you can believe it, on Anzac Day, so for those listening, Anzac Day in Australia is kind of the equivalent of Veterans Day to us. Anzac stands for Australian New Zealand Army Corps, and it's in World War I, this combined Australian New Zealand Army Corps group got slaughtered in Turkey, and it was like astronomical failure of a mission. We got sort of sent to the wrong place, but it's our sort of yearly Memorial Day. So on Anzac Day is when I sort of catch up with Army people. I see of them. You go to all the memorials and stuff, and I saw a guy who I've spoken about numerous times on the podcast. I've never used his name because he's still in, and in fact, at the moment, he's now the RSM SOCOM, which is like, that's probably as high as his career can possibly go. He's the RSM. He's the highest ranked enlisted soldier within Special Forces. He's the head of it now. And I haven't seen him in a long time, but we worked together pretty closely for 4 years, and he was probably one of the most significant mentors in my life. I got to tell him that, which is pretty cool. Like because like at the time, you never really appreciate those things. And also this is a long time ago. I first started working with him, I think it was like in 2007 or something like that. So like it's a long time you don't appreciate those moments when you're in them. And I don't know that I ever actually said those things to him. So it was really cool to get to catch up with him. He follows my Instagram because he's a mean old man, like most sort of army guys like that are. And he says to me, he put a lot of work into me. He put a fucking ton of work into me. And I can still remember the day that I told him that I'd broken my back and that this is probably the end for me. And I still remember the look on his face. Like it was this mix of like, he was sad for me for sure and was like, that sucks for you. But he couldn't hide the anger that he had over like, fuck, I've put so much work into you and now you're going to go. So anyway, I saw him on Anzac Day and he said to me, I watch your Instagram. You're a really good teacher. He's the one that taught me to teach. And I was like, yeah. And before I could even thank him, he then goes, yes, well, I'm glad all that fucking work I put into you hasn't gone to a total waste. And I was like, yeah, thanks, mate.
Isn't that a buzz to be able to appreciate somebody and give them some love for the support and the wealth of whatever they injected into you, that you can actually say it to them without it being at their eulogy? I really feel, and I know you and I have expressed this before, the importance of, if somebody is of value to you, like a friend or somebody that you admire or that they've just been helpful to you, why not say that to them? Why not have the appreciation for them? Because, like I found there's been times where I've missed the opportunity to do that, only to find out that they died or something happened, some tragedy unfolded, and I didn't get the opportunity, and it fucking cuts me to the quick because it was important that I, like either cleared the air or gave the apology or did the thing that I wanted to do. And when I have done it, when I have expressed to somebody how wonderful I think they are or what a difference they've made, I was going to say it's not for me, but it is for me. It is something that's important. It is something that you kind of think, I got that out and I let that person actually know, because there's been times before, and it only happened last week, funnily enough, where in one of the podcast episodes, I must have sounded like I was down and out and over it all. Kerr actually sent me this really encouraging message, and I thought that was really lovely of him to do that. That was a really nice thing of him to reach out and just basically saying, hey man, I appreciate you. And, those sort of things, for some people, it might just be a Tuesday, but for you, it's like, it made you weak, like you think, holy shit, I'm just floating on a bit of a cloud now because I feel a bit loved. Because I feel that there is, and especially in the dog training university of life, there is a lot of negativity around, and there's a lot of people who love to bring you down. It's kind of like their sport. They just kind of love to deflate your tires because that's the type of people that they are.
Well, misery loves company.
Well, doesn't it? But there's other people out there who they've either been a fan of yours or a student of yours or just followed along or watched you on social media. There's a lovely lady over in New Zealand. She's always sending these little messages and really appreciates.
Supportive messages. Really supportive stuff.
Really supportive stuff. And just that she takes time out in her day to say thanks for doing the episode, and her dog Apache, that she had tumors in the eyes, had them taken out, and just really feel that she's a little on her own over there, and it actually gives her the capability to be connected and plugged into the dog training world. So those sort of things are incredible. And likewise with you, mate, I appreciate that there have been people that have been influential and mentoring, maybe even just in a friendly way, very loving towards you or something like that. And it's important that those people are reminded that they are of value, they are good people, and that have made a difference in your life. Because, you know, you wouldn't be where you are without the guidance and support and mentorship, or even the parenting of some of those people around you.
Yeah, for sure. And so like I got to say that, and it was really, he pissed me off because he just didn't want to hear it. He kept like changing the topic. It was like, because I was trying to have a moment, you know, I was trying to explain to this guy like, hey man, you were one of the main characters of my life. Like so much of the way that I act, so much of my interactions with people and the way that I structure things, I learned from you. And so any success that I have, you are a big part of that. And while I'm in a completely different field now, I take so much of what you taught me and it applies to my whole life. And so I'm trying to thank him, and he's just like, yeah, whatever. Like just was carrying on, like wasn't having it.
You probably would have made him emotional. Some people can't deal with that. Sometimes
sure.
they think they put up a wall because they think, fuck, don't touch my soft side. That's not who I am. You know, like I don't want to be revealed as a big softie. Like I've had to put that behind a brick wall for a lot of my life so I can get through this shit.
Yeah. That was interesting to me. And that's an interesting sort of way to live as well. Like as you said, sort of making sure that people know how you feel about them when you really appreciate someone. It's given me cause to speak to my own parents differently, you know, like having my own kids even thank you for doing stuff, or just say that they appreciate you, or, you know, like give any sort of feedback that their life is good when you're trying to provide them a good life is, as a parent, it's like there's nothing that competes with that. Like there's nothing that I can imagine being more important to me than when my kids are like, hey, you're doing a good job. I appreciate my life. And so like I've found myself then going like, oh shit, I need to say that to my own parents more often. Like I need to make sure my parents understand that I'm happy and thankful for everything that they've provided me, because the way that I feel when my own kids do it to me, I'm like, holy shit, that's an incredible feeling. I should pass that around as much as I could. I should tell the truth about that as much as I possibly can. But anyway, that's my story. Hey, you wanted to talk about something you saw on the internet.
I think everyone's seen it on the internet at the moment. It's the King Charles dog in the rescue facility, that there's one bully dog that's having a bit of a hard time and trying to throw his assertiveness around on a few dogs. And you just see this dog in the background just come out of obscurity, and this great big black Great Dane just bows before him as he walks past them.
Yeah.
You know, you see the shepherd that sort of like stands up in the air like, whoa, the boss dog has come out of hiding or come off his pedestal, and he walks over and without beating the dog up, he just like literally flips him over and just has a word with him and puts him at ease about who's the boss and how this situation is going to unfold. I've seen snippets of the clip and I've seen extended versions of it. Funnily enough, there's a myriad of people around the world that are losing their mind over this clip. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. If you rewind, or if you've been one of those people who have binge listened to the Canine Paradigm, I'm sure you've heard you and I having these conversations early on in the piece when the rest of the world was dismissing dominance theory and saying it doesn't happen and dogs don't do that and yada, yada, yada. Whereas what I've insisted on is the same as a scientist would insist on. I have seen it change with my own eyes. Not change, I've seen it unfold with my own eyes. I've seen dogs doing this for years, and I've seen my own dogs doing it to each other for years. I've seen them sorting out situations where one dog will reign over the others and saying, this is the order of the backyard and this is how it's going to be. This is what happens in the backyard. This is our kingdom. This is our territory. And I rule over this with an iron fist in most situations. But even that dog will play. Even that dog will have, you know, like if he's got a snappy bitch, that he will allow that sort of thing to go on. And he won't beat her up or be uncharacteristic or just like a cruel dictator in those sort of situations. Dominance serves a purpose. It happens for a reason. It always has happened for a reason. The great thing that I love about that clip is you see how the other dogs react to that dog because they know who he is. They know what he's about. He's earned the title. They've given it to him because there has been situations in the past. We don't know what's happened in the past with his interaction with the Great Dane or the German Shepherd or any other dogs that he's walked by. Like there's a backstory.
That's an interesting piece of information.
Right.
That's what I would love to see, right?
Of
is
course.
Like, how did he develop that level of respect? Because he's not exactly a lot to look at, right?
Well, that's
like
what they say. Like he's just some sort of poodle cross, you know, mastiff
just
type of
some
dog.
kind of mongrel dog.
Yeah, just the shaggy DA.
But I've only seen that one clip, and I've seen it a bunch of times. I've seen a bunch of people breaking down all the behaviors in it. But he definitely carries himself with presence. And that black dog, like whether you say it's a Great Dane, whatever it was, it's it's probably some kind of mongrel. Yeah, whatever it was, it literally bows.
It
as
kneels.
It
Yeah, it takes a knee to him. Yeah.
Like, and there's the one dog in the background that was getting dicked around by the dog he goes after. He goes and gets in his kennel. Like, everybody gets out of the way, right? So my sort of question is, like, how did that come to be? Like, there had to be, can he fight real good? And has he been in a bunch of fights? Like, did he earn that, or is it just a presence? Because I've only ever experienced what I think are, like, of course, dominance hierarchies exist, right? Like, you get any three dogs together, a hierarchy will emerge.
And people.
Yeah, exactly, right? And like the hierarchies, they're not locked. I think that's where the people who are like the debunkers of dominance theory, they'll start showing you, well, what about this variable? What about this variable? And we go, yeah, like that's what makes it incredible, is that it's a very fluid thing. Dominance is a very fluid thing, and it can change with the scene and the setting and the resources. My favorite, I'm sure I've said it before, but one of my favorite things was I was listening to a Force Free podcast, and they were talking about how dominance theory doesn't exist, like, at all. It's just like the absolutely dominance does exist, and to say so is ridiculous. All that is one dog's willingness to fight over a resource versus another's. And I was like, how's that not dominance? like that's the definition.
I just want to jump in there, mate, because we were talking about appreciation before, and I really want to extend my appreciation. If you listen to this, Dr. Melanie Uda, you are a superstar with your little snippets that you're putting out there, and literally reading through some of the bullshit that's been put out online that's been convincing myriads of people who unfortunately have been following these studies that are developed to fool people into believing their narrative. Whereas what you are doing is giving a very dry and a fresh perspective on what actually happened in that study and why it was effective to the outcomes that they were trying to force it into. I want you to know that we appreciate what you're doing, and I would love it if some people, which they won't, but if they would step up and have a friendly debate with you and talk to you directly. So if they're not convinced of what you've put forward, we would love to hear it online. We'd love to see that sort of thing happen. And I know that you're not a provocateur, and I know that you're not going after anybody. I know that you are a bastion of the truth, and that's what I appreciate about you and always have, because I think you spend a lot of your personal time giving away free information to a lot of people. And like anybody else, you deserve to be compensated for it. You deserve to have people come to you for help and advice. And if there's a paper that they need to be deciphered or anything like that, by all means, you're the right person.
She has courses.
Yes,
she has online courses. They're very good. I'm in communication with people who have done them and continue to do them. And I watch them change the way that they interact with their dogs after having done her courses. So they're very good. You can pay her. You can give her money and get better. But she also does a lot of that sort of stuff for free, like making that social media content and going to war for us, which is very impressive. She does a wonderful job. But I think, as I was saying, with dominance, it's such a fluid thing, right? Like, you change one variable in the environment and it can really change who's in charge, right? Because it's expensive to be in charge. It takes a lot of effort and you have to maintain it when you're there. And I think that we see, for the most part, that dominance can be quite fluid. I like to use my own two dogs as an example. In the house, my Springer Spaniel is quite dominant over my Malinois. She really controls his behavior. She tells him where he can go, what he can do, and what he can interact with. If I were to leave them to their own devices, she wouldn't even let him eat. I had to teach her not to do it, but she can push him off of food from in her kennel. So like, they're in separate kennels, but there's a wire wall in between them, and she can convince him through that wire wall not to eat his food and to wait until she finishes eating so that she can eat his food, even though she can't get to it. You can't observe that and think, oh, she's not more dominant than him. But it's because in that context, she wants the things that he doesn't have a great deal of concern about, right? Like, she wants it, therefore makes the decision like, this is worth fighting over. I will push the topic. But the moment that we leave the house, and especially if like there's a ball or something that brings my dog up in arousal, she knows, oh, I got no chance. And so she just separates herself completely, because Remy at that point, it's not necessarily that he would be more dominant than her. It's that he wants the thing more, which is the same as being more dominant than her. He will cause problems for her if she tries to get in the way. He's willing to fight over it, where she's not willing to fight. And actually, the truth is he's not willing to fight. He wouldn't even acknowledge her. He would just go through her in order to get the ball. She could be trying as hard as she wanted. He would just take it from her without any kerfuffle. So dominance is really fluid and it changes. And so that's what I mean when you look at that situation and you go, okay, how did that dog assert his dominance in that place? Like, how did that come to be? Because he's not like he's torn up. He's not he didn't fight his way to the top necessarily. Like, he just has a presence, or he has whatever it is, that strength that the other dogs identify and yield to.
There is a clip of him with an injury. Like, there's an alternate clip.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, where I think even that big black dog is smelling the injury and assessing what's actually going on. And I've only seen a very short snippet of it. I would love to see more of that dog. I really hope that he sort of becomes a social media presence, because it's interesting to watch these behaviors. But as you were saying, like in his fight history, I would say he would have had to have had some stoushes before. However, when you look at the aspect of dominance, and as Roger Abrantes has eloquently placed it before, dominance serves a purpose. And when you change from being dominant to actually having a fight, you're not being dominant anymore. You're now being aggressive. So you're changing your mindset. The purpose of dominance is not to fight, is to try and convince you don't want to do this because I am better than you in combat and you will get hurt. But if your opponent doesn't believe that, or they feel they're as equal or more capable than you, then they're going to rise to the occasion. They're going to say, well, fuck you and your dominance. Let's rumble. And now you're being aggressive with each other. When you get into the discourse about dominance theory and people's concerns around it, what they're trying to do is control what trainers do with dogs that they think are dominant. And in many cases, they've done the wrong things. They've interfered with behavioral patterns that should be left alone. Like if there are dogs in the backyard sorting their shit out and nobody's really getting hurt, but there's a bit of noise and a bit of kerfuffle, you got to put your emotions on the back burner and just say, they're sorting this shit out. I've had to watch my dogs doing things before where I've thought, yeah, I should not get involved in this. This is something that is a part of the backyard discussion. I've just got to monitor it and make sure that it's not extending into actual aggression where dogs are then going to get eviscerated, or, I'm going to be either mopping a dog up or...
You don't want a real fight.
You don't want a real fight, and those are not things that you're promoting. But what you do want to do is allow the dogs to create a harmonious living environment where they're basically saying, all right, this is how it goes down. This is the pecking order. It's me, it's you, it's you, it's you. And that has to be worked out on the numeration of dogs that you've got. But what they need to do is understand who is who, because that's what animals do. And that's what people do. This is why I included people in this before. People do this in workplaces. People do this in social orders. This is why there's comedy movies like Mean Girls and so forth, is because that's what people do. They structure and they create order. They create an environment where there is people who are in charge, people who perceive they're in charge, and to some degree it has to be allowed to run its course. I'm not talking about if people are concerned about things like bullying or, targeting people, because then again, once again, we're getting into realms of mental anguish or an extension of emotions which humans have over other lower functioning animals. But as I've got to seed back into this discussion, we're not talking about aggression. Aggression needs to be managed. That's where trainers do need to step in. This is where trainers need to be, a consortium of well-adjusted people need to step in and resolve these matters. Now, whether it be through training tactics, whether it be through the appropriate use of tools, or whether it be through medications, if that's what it takes, that's what it needs to be. But I think a narrative that we've been trying to pass on to people is we've got to lead the narrative with removing pharmaceutical companies' influence from a lot of this. I was listening to Diary of a CEO a while ago. He had a guest on. I should be more prepared with this to have the actual person's name. And if it's important enough and people want to know who it is or what the episode is, I can put this in the discussion group. But he was talking to a guest where the guest primarily went on to say, two leading scientists in the United States were influenced to make fats the bad guy and promote sugar. Not only did these scientists get paid for doing this, they also got promoted to jobs where they could influence the world on the importance of sugar over fats.
Yeah.
This is documented. He was saying there is evidence to support this. This is not just my theory or me banging up about this. There is a paper
that's
trail.
all come out. And they got paid a pittance, which is the worst
$50,000 or something. You heard the episode, did you?
Yeah, I haven't heard the episode, but I'm familiar with the story. And I think that's that was what I lost my mind about when I found out how little they got paid and the fucking amount of influence that it cost. I was like, oh my God, you radically altered the way literally millions of people eat, and we're still recovering from this. And you didn't even end up with 6 figures of money. What a pathetic amount of money to radically alter the course of history and to do so much damage for so little gain.
But they also got put into positions of authority where they could maintain that level as well. But the author of this material was going on about the destructive nature of what they actually did and the harm that they actually did, not only to the people of the United States, but people of the world, because other people were leeching off this information and going, sugar's okay. We can pour it into kids' food and start changing the landscape. And the heart issues, the diabetes issues, all of the issues, all of the things where people are saying, trust the government, trust the science. And I heard Joe Rogan talking about this the other day where he was saying, what an absolute farcical nonsense load of shit. He said, it's not that I don't believe in science and so forth like this, but we've just been led down a path of don't question anything. You shouldn't question these sort of things. And this is the reason I'm ranting about this right now is because there's been a lot of harm in raising dogs, and bite statistics and dog aggression cases and people's problem with dogs is on the rise. It's not in decline. It's significant. There's more problems than ever. We've been told to trust the science. We've been told to back off tools. We've been told all of these things that we're the bad guys in this story, yet we're seeing an emergence of people that are going the other way. Then why are we seeing things getting worse, not getting better?
Yeah.
And I really feel like this is what people have to examine and have to come up with a good enough strategy to convince us that what we're doing is wonderful. Take your emotion out of it. Take the emotion away from it, because yes, there's bad guys in both camps and both stories. We've acknowledged that, and we will continue to do so, because there's always people who do things for their own gain, or because they're ignorant people as well. There's people out there who have got degrees in this and degrees in that. But again, as it's been suggested and other prolific speakers or podcasters have talked about, just because they've got a degree, they've literally halted everything after that and just maintained a flat line of information. They haven't done anything significant. They haven't studied under people. They haven't gone to more conferences. They haven't updated their information. And a pox on those fucking people, because they're still out there telling other people how to run their life. They're still worked out how to influence a pocket of people and say, look at these evil people over here doing stuff. Whereas what we need to do is saying, what's the facts around this? Like when we've got people like Melanie Uter who's prepared to sit down and dissect this and read through the legions of bullshit and actually say, all right, well, let's look at this from a logistics standpoint. When you actually break it down and realize that this is not what we've been told it is, like people have read and cherry picked some of the headline points about this, but they've also misconstrued the information and left some critical points out about how this was actually conducted. And in some cases, she's even highlighted that it's owner surveys, like the studies that people have referred to are owner fucking surveys, people who are emotionally incompetent to actually give you scientific data. That's a fucking scary point. And you've got old mate who's in the background poisoning the chalice. Not only is he poisoning the chalice on balanced dog trainers, he's also going after his own people as well, because as you have famously said before, Pat, they're not positive enough.
Yeah.
It gets me rolled up. I know I'm getting ranty and pissy about this, but...
Well, mate, you said something interesting. I think it's worth exploring a little bit. Like I think with the pushing forward of positive dog training, that knife has cut in 2 directions. And I think it's very interesting. You know, I haven't been around in dogs long enough to remember a time before there was an influence of positive only training, right? Like you've been around long enough to know like what old school yank and crank was when there was no other side of the scale. Like, so I think it's interesting that the standard of dog training that we see amongst dog trainers now is exceptional. And I think that's one of the sort of incredible things. There are so many highly talented balance trainers that can outperform. You might look at like the average person who identifies as like, I'm a plus R trainer. I only train in that modality. This is all that I do. I don't want to use any aversives. Like, cool, fair enough, whatever. But there are many balance trainers who can outperform those people at the positive only point, like run circles around them, because they're truly balanced. They really get both sides of it, and their capability in use of positive reinforcement and those kind of, clever strategies in training dogs to high standards, or even just influencing behavior in pet dog type work or aggression rehab and stuff like that. We have people who are so fucking good at that, only using positive methods, that still also use balanced methods.
I think the realm in what you're talking about, mate, and just to summarize that in my own head, they have a far better outcome in high value stimulus control.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You look at the sports now, like you look at, say, IGP, you look at the world titles of IGP and you'll see just fucking incredible. It's just a movement and a flow with a dog that 30 years ago was an uncommon, it was a remarkable thing to see. You see someone that could move with a dog like that, you're like, holy shit, that person's incredible. Well, now everybody's doing that. This influence of force-free type training or more plus R based training has been wonderful. And I haven't really known a dog world without it, right? By the time I came into it, there were already these big battles between balanced and plus R trainers, but I have never seen the effect of one without the other. But what I think is really interesting, and in the sports and the training of dogs to do cool stuff, we've benefited so much from plus R training, like so much. We are so capable because of the work that people, I'll use her name again. It's the same name I always use. I watch Sarah Brewski train and I'm like, oh, this is like watching a magician do their work.
You're like Leonardo DiCaprio where you go,
Yeah, look at this, right? But then you can then go, okay, well, because she has decided to hamstring herself, she's tied one hand behind her back and decided not to use the tools. She has figured out things that I wouldn't invest the brain power to figure out because I know other ways. And I can learn them from her. I can pay the money, or I can do courses, or I can just watch her online and figure it out. I can learn a lot. And then I can go, okay, like that's a cool technique that I have for the times that I can't use the tools, or it can supplement the tool use that I'm going to use, or maybe because of the way that somebody has used the tools in the past, now the dog has an association to that and it's not going to work for me in this. So I can steal from all that. I can borrow it. And so for us as balanced trainers that are across a full spectrum, I am massively improved by the work that force-free people or plus R people do, because I can steal it. I can look at it and go, oh, fuck yeah, that's in my Rolodex now. Sweet. Thank you. And when the appropriate time to use that comes up, I'll use it, or I'll make a hybrid of it that I use myself. Got it. So dog training has gotten way better. Like you've only got to look at, say, the numbers of people in PSA with level 3. When I first started paying attention to PSA, I think there was 16 dogs with a level 3. And now there's 40 something, right? Like in only 10 years, it's more than doubled the number of people, and people are getting it more and more and more, because as trainers, we're doing things now with dogs that was perhaps thought of as impossible not that long ago. But what we don't see is a reduction in bite statistics. What we haven't seen is like a reduction in dogs going to shelters. What we haven't seen is a reduction in dogs being labeled dangerous. If anything, it seems to me, and look, I'm no expert in this, and this would be a thing that would be locally dependent on, independent variables depending on where you are. So everybody's going to end up with different data on this. But it certainly looks to me like those things are all trending upwards. More and more people are having problems with their dogs. More and more dogs are being surrendered to shelters. More and more dogs are biting people. Like bite statistics are increasing. More and more dogs are being registered dangerous every year. So like objectively, dog training as a whole and in the parts that matter, it hasn't improved. Like we haven't gotten any better. Like for sure, we are able to do amazing stuff with dogs. And you look at people like, who's another incredible name I can say out loud, like Omar von Mueller. You look at him, you're like, oh my God, right? He's doing things with dogs that even though I'm watching it, I'm trying to figure out whether it's AI, right? Like I'm like, holy shit, how's he trained that? This is incredible. Even though there's people like him that exist and there's people who are achieving incredible things, when we look at the whole picture of it, the average dog in someone's home isn't necessarily any better off than they were 30, 40 years ago. We're not fixing those issues on a whole. If anything, I'd say that we're probably making them worse.
We've made them worse, and we've also discouraged people from having dogs, which falls down the rabbit hole of what Peter wants. I've literally had people reach out to me and saying, mate, that sounds so far-fetched. I said, do the research, open the books, have a look. Have a look at the quotes. Have a look at how they're even now trying to hide those and shuffle that back in the deck so people don't actually see what they stand for. Well, Ingrid Newkirk is still the president of the People for Ethical Treatment of Animals. And if you ask me, am I down for the ethical treatment of animals? Of course I am. I've been asked that. I think it's a stupid question because I've dedicated many years of my life, decades in fact, in helping people meet and exceed the best capabilities of the dogs in their house. Like I've done so much work for people. I've done a lot of it gratis too, where people have monopolized a lot of my time to talk to me about friends, family, colleagues, whatever, about how to improve the living standards with their dog. And I have never told them get fucked or anything like that. I may have said I'm busy now, but you can call me later, but I've come back to it and I've done that. And not only have I done that, many of my colleagues have done that. I know you've done it, and I know many, 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 many more people that I know have spent many hours consoling people, working with them, resolving issues, because we're down for the ethical treatment of animals. The ethical treatment of animals, in my mind, involves the use of whatever needs to be used in an ethical manner. Like when you're talking about ethics, it's not ethics to corral people into a mindset that all is lost. You can't do this anymore, or, oh, well, we can't own these breeds. We can't do these sports. The military can't use dogs for hunting down criminals who are going to kill you or haven't got the control or the mindset that most civilians who are just getting about their daily business. You can't use dogs for doing this. You can't use police horses for this sort of thing because it doesn't align with our way of thinking. That's fucking crazy talk. And that's the fear that I have. We're letting Dracula run the blood bank. And that's the issue of many of these topics of discussion. Out of something so simple as watching a dog, like when we get back to our subject matter of talking about King Charles, the way that, or whatever his name is, he's been called King Charles in social media, in front of your very eyes. And it's not AI. It's not an AI clip. It's actual shelter dogs in a situation where he's controlling and managing a situation. And that's what I have tried to encourage people all my life is control and manage a situation. Don't exceed your capability. You don't have to be in excess of what you're doing. If you're using punishment, use just enough to control and manage the situation. That's all I've tried to do with people all my life. And you're right, mate, with what you said before, the influence that people have had with better forms of training when they've influenced a more positive side of it, and it can be plugged in or bolted onto your knowledge of how to train a dog. Why not use that? Why not consider that? And there's certainly things that I have. I've looked at what people have said and I've thought, yep, I can utilize that until I can't. And when I can't, I need to control and manage the situation with the techniques that need to be used, with the tools that need to be used. Being shamed and being discouraged from using them, how's that working out for you? How's that resolving the issues that you and I have just been speaking about 10 minutes ago when we're talking about bite statistics on the rise, dogs surrendered on the rise, all of these things? Open your fucking eyes. Like, these things are getting taken away from you. You're being led down a path. And I think there's a rotten head at the top of this, which I keep saying, I really believe it's from people like the pharmaceutical companies and so forth, as crazy as that sounds. And I hear myself when I say these things. I get concerned about these sort of things, but I'm sure I'm right. I'm sure I'm on the money, because there's, like when you look at other people, intelligent people, researched people who have been digging into the past of some of the rotten shit that's been going on, like the scientists who got paid and bought off and allowed sugar to become a national standard of consumption for the American public. Mate, you've got to understand that people can be bought off, people can be colluded, people can be convinced that there's another way. That whole thing, trust the science. I'm not a fucking science denier. I love science. I relish in good science. I love seeing things being developed and how far we're pushing human engineering and the imagination. Like, these things are wild to me. Like, I consume many, many hours of watching engineering feats and so forth. But I'm also convinced that there's some fucking evil and nefarious people out there who are pushing an agenda and a narrative to stop us doing some of the basic things that, like having better relationships with animals that doesn't involve being horribly cruel and malevolent to them as well.
It's a funny one. Of late on my social media, I post reels of just me giving training advice all the time. And when I post stuff about positive only training, like when I'm giving someone advice on terms of how they should use their positive reinforcement, the reels go fine. When it's something that shows the full spectrum of balanced training, they really perform really well, those reels. Like people share them a lot. And the ones where I'm just talking about a correct use of pressure, they attract like weird comments, right? Like I had one I posted a couple of weeks ago, but I was just talking about, it's just a clip of, all the reels are just from me training in here, and we run the camera all the time and we just cut pieces out, and it's just like little bits of information. So one of them was I was explaining to the guys about, I was trying to bring some stability. It was to my own dog, and I wanted to like proof a bunch of his basic behaviors because we're training towards something at the moment. And so I was like, okay, I just want him to hold a sit. That's about as basic as behavior as it can get. And for my 8-year-old Malinois with a PSA 2, that should be a pretty easy thing to do. Only I'm going to start pushing the proofing, right? I put him onto a cart, which was really tricky, wobbly sort of situation. I had a decoy push him around on the cart. And so I'm following along, and I said to the guys, I'm going to use a slip leash in this session, because a prong collar is more activating of my dog, right? It's more like something that will make him want to do behaviors, and a slip leash will bring more stability and put him into the behaviors a bit better. So when I had him on the cart, he's being pushed around. I've got a slip leash coming off of it. And if he goes to get off the cart, I just slightly put on a little bit of pressure, which then is communication to him like, no, stay in that position. And he like goes back into the position. So that the reel actually just said, we're going to use it, we can use a prong collar is best suited to creating a behavior, and the slip lead is best suited to maintaining a behavior. That's all the reel said. And it brought a bunch of comments. One from some dog trainers like, what total nonsense. I'm like, okay, so those are the comments that I just ignore totally. And then there's another one saying like, why do you need that? So what I always do when people ask, even if they're really accusatory questions, is I answer, right? If I've got the time, I'm like, hey, this is why we do it. And like, here's a little bit more information, considering this was just a snippet. But then I get the ones that like some lady commented that, or you could just train the dog. And I'm like, what the fuck do you think I'm doing? Like, this is the thing of like, what the fuck do you think I'm doing with these tools? Like, do you think that these tools train the dog themselves? Do you think I show the dog a slip leash and the dog's fear of the slip leash decides, oh no, I'm going to do this super complex thing that you want me to do because I fucking saw a slip leash or I've got one on. Like, what a stupid fucking thing to say. But the moment I get that, then I go like, oh, that tells me everything like I need to know about you and how you've been indoctrinated, right? And then like the next layer to that, this is how my mind goes, was remember when I stopped training dogs for a little while and I was working for Matt, I was him online, right? So like I had, his Instagram was logged in on my account because I had to post on his behalf, and I'd read all the comments and sort of make sure that we were tracking all the metrics that we were meant to. And he would get these comments from people that were, like really offensive. And so it was interesting to me because you were talking about sales training, like in the emotive world of dog training, when we get people calling us dickheads and whatever, I'm like, okay, whatever. Like this is an emotional thing, but it happens everywhere. Like I say, I'm in like I've posted photos of like people saying that everyone that uses a Canon camera is a bully. I'm leaving this group. And it's like, Jesus Christ. So like the online fighting happens no matter what space you're in. But Matt used to get these comments and I would read them and I would kind of click through and I would try and get a sense of like, who's this person? And in every single instance, when I clicked through, there were people who were less successful than him, but attempting to do the same thing. They were all people who were like attempting to be him, but were not pulling it off and were not being successful. And every single negative comment to a T, like every single one of them was from that kind of person. And then one day there was someone writing some pretty offensive shit and I showed it to him and he just burst out laughing, right? Like he just was hysterical. Now he has this level of confidence that I could own. This is why I love him. He's one of my closest friends, but he has a level of self-confidence that I aspire to, but I could never hold. And he just started laughing and I was like, mate, what's so funny? And he looked me dead in the eye and he goes, imagine being that loser. Imagine like that comes up in your feed and you immediately start typing that out. Like imagine having the time to do that. And that's what it comes down to. That's what I see is when we see all these ridiculous comments and we see that, and we see old mates stirring up a bunch of bullshit, I think, how much fucking time do you have that you can commit the time to stop scrolling, to comment, and to say something stupid or hateful or whatever on someone else's thing, and rather than just zipping past it? Like when the algorithm serves it to you, like, sure, no worries. I appreciate that it just goes into your feed. You don't necessarily control what comes into your feed. The algorithm doesn't necessarily know the difference between a balance and a force-free dog trainer. If you follow a lot of force-free dog training, I'm going to come up in your feed now and again. But imagine then going, all right, I'm going to stop. I'm going to hit the comment button and I'm going to watch this all the way through. I'm going to decide that I disagree with it. And then I'm going to comment something just snarky and rude against it. Be in the shoes of that person just for a moment. Just live their life. Try and imagine it. It's fucking horrible. I don't want anything to do with that life. Like the kind of person that's doing that, I'm like, ugh, even imagining what your day-to-day is like makes me feel sick. So like that's the sort of people that we're up against, right? The people who are making those comments and fueling those comments. That's the sort of life that they're living. It's very depressing. So much we can do about it other than just scroll on.
I think that's the self-help that you need is you kind of got to look and do an evaluation of, do I really want to be bogged down in this cesspool for these shit people? Because it's like an old saying, idiots will only take you out to deep water and drown you because they're experienced in that level of malevolency. Yeah. They're the things that I've had to convince myself off, and I've had to back off from conversations and just create distance. I think that's basically the best way is just block them out. And it'll be like Joe Rogan. Don't read the comments. Don't worry about it. You know, like if you're trying to do the right thing, as long as you're not deliberately going around kicking up hornets' nests. But when you referred to old mate before, he's got a reason to create absolute fucking warfare is because he's getting paid for it.
Yeah.
And there's an agenda behind that. And the agenda is not based in benevolence and kindness and love and support. It's based on how do I keep this stirring up so people will keep clicking on my feed. Yeah. And that in itself, you have to look at that and say, wow, check that out. Look at the depths that some of these people in social media are prepared to go to because they're getting paid for it. They're getting paid to make you and I hate each other, to turn brother on brother and friend against friend or club against club because they're getting paid for it. And that just goes to show you the power of consumerism sometimes and what people can actually do. This is when I kick back to those studies before, when people that you trust are actually getting paid off to fucking mislead you into doing untold amounts of harm. It is truly white-collar criminal behavior that people they'll never be convicted of it. People might say some harsh words about them, but some of those things should be jailable offences. There should be some form of social conviction for what they have done in their nefarious behaviours, like in what they have led people to do, or it's almost like a genocide of dogs. Because in some cases, there's going to be dogs that get washed out of capabilities. There's going to be dogs that are going to be surrendered. There's going to be people that believe that there is no hope for their dog. Something is going to happen to shorten that dog's life simply because of the bad advice of somebody who on the high tier of things is getting paid off for doing it.
Yeah.
Sidestepping for a minute because it just came into my mind while you were talking. I was listening to Jacob Morgan, his podcast the other day, because he's been over in South Africa, I believe, on safari. Because he said, I went on safaris with these guys to check out animals and see what they're doing. And he said, I love the conservation that they're doing and, you know, what it means to stop poaching and blah, blah, blah. But he also said that the guy who was one of his guides over there made note that a lion and an antelope or a gazelle or another animal can literally be grazing next to each other and have no issue with each other up until the time where that animal needs to hunt and eat. Like it doesn't go out of its way and just think, I need to fuck you up and let's have a fight. Or like a lion and a leopard won't just get into a fight with each other unless it's over territorial disputes or scarcity of some kind. So it doesn't happen. Like animals that can be aggressive to each other on a regular basis aren't. He made a good point, which I thought was very valid in, unfortunately, the domestication of dogs have created issues with that where dogs are that animal, which that when they get to each other, they don't know and don't understand that they don't need to do this because they've never been raised in that process before. Let's say, for example, a lion and its cubs will always understand that that's the way the world is. You don't need to go over and beat up an enemy. You don't need to chase something that's going to consume energy. You don't need to do all these sort of things because that will only cause problems for you. Like getting into a fight with a rival over no reason is going to harm you and possibly cause you to die. So out of natural selection, those things are not good choices. However, with dogs, they're not raised in a situation like that through domestication and poor training practices and poor social or habitual environments. So when they get into dog park scenarios and so forth, the dog goes, well, I don't understand not to fight you because I've never been raised enough in these scenarios where I'm around enough dogs that I get it, that I understand that this is not something I need to do because it's only going to cause me a mischief. And because the person who's handling and managing the dog is told you can't handle a managed dog like that. You just have to allow these behaviors to happen or try and avoid it or take a little pill and all the problems will go away. Well, the fucking statistics don't show that. The statistics aren't fucking moving in that direction, my friends. There is an observation that needs to happen around there and there's more questions that need to come up on a practical scientific basis of why is this so? Why is it happening? And until they're satisfactory, like it's peer reviewed, not just with the usual group of manifesting this information to suit their own narrative, it needs to be on a common basis where a lot of people are looking at it and go, well, it is an interesting problem. And these could be some of the reasons why, because we've tried it your way and it doesn't seem to happen. Let's look at it holistically.
Yeah, I agree. It's the in-home stuff, like it's the lifestyle stuff of dog training that I think has suffered most from that kind of information. I think it would be interesting to see, like with Old Mate, which is, by the way, for those, that's an Australian saying for when you can't be bothered saying someone's name. And we're not saying his name, but if you were to travel back in time, like, and look at his influence on the industry, I think there was a time when he served like a positive. He created a net positive. I think that there was a time where his YouTube videos that was teaching his border collie tricks and so forth, like there was a time that he was a positive contributor to the industry. But I think the scale for sure has tipped. And I think that that would be a very confronting thing to understand. Like, I think that's why he never can. He'll never be able to see what he's doing because he's chasing the money, right? Like he's painted himself into a corner financially for clicks and views. And his knowledge is so low and the advice that he gives is so bad that by now, for sure, he's created a net negative result. Like he's created more harm than good to more dogs. Like the bad information that he's provided has defended and cut out the voices who can fix the problems that he has created. Like I think that ship has sailed to the point where he's definitely, if he were to sit and reflect, he would have to say, I have created a huge problem. Like it is my fault that many dogs have been euthanized. And I think to do that, it would be too much. He can't do it. And I think that the human reaction then is to double down on what you're doing, right? Like is to just not allow it and just keep pushing it, because to slow down, to stop would be to reflect, and to reflect would be too painful, and to realize what you've done has been so damaging. So I think that's kind of the issue that we're facing in that space, is that how can he stop? How can he possibly? Because to do so would be so painful, to realize you are the reason why so many dogs had horrible managed lives or been euthanized because of really easy problems that could have been fixed by somebody who actually had a fucking clue, right? And if people were not indoctrinated against it. And so that's what I mean. That's the relevance of when I see these comments where people say, when I'm talking about the eloquent choice of a prong collar or a slip leash to have the exact communication effect that I want with a dog, and then to be accused that's not training. Why don't you just train the dog? To have got to the point where people are thinking that way is just a radical indoctrination. I think that he has to continue to push that narrative and encourage other people to think that way, because to not do so would just be too painful. To have to reflect inwards and go, fuck, what have I done? Right? Like I just can't imagine that day is coming.
Have you ever been given advice on soldiering by somebody who has no experience being a soldier or understanding advanced battlefield tactics or anything like that? Have you ever been in that position before?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. And it's something I was going to talk about earlier, like right at the start when we were talking about police and military stuff. And I used the exact example of bringing in civilian pistol coach. So I had this guy he was a nice guy. And like, I've got nothing negative to say about him, but he had never been in the army or a policeman, but he was like world level IPSC shooter. Now, I don't know a lot about IPSC, but it's target shooting, but tactical sort of maneuvering on a range. And one of the things that he said was he will always change magazines on his pistol between stations. And he was encouraging us to do the same. And I was like, hey man, I'm not doing that. There's no way. And he kind of looked at me like, I was like, I'm not practicing that. Like, I've known a lot about training in that. In fact, the mentor I was talking about earlier, he put me through a bunch of really cool courses. He organized the funding for me to really understand training and how training is done well early on in my army career. And I was acutely aware of like what you do in training, you will do in combat. And so you need to be very careful what you do in training, because you're not going to be really very in control of yourself when you're in a giant gunfight. You're going to do what you were trained to do. And so you need to train properly. And so one of the things this guy wanted us to do in what was sort of a long gun transition to short gun scenario was drop magazines as we change positions. And I said, hey man, I only carry one magazine. I was like, if I, in a green rolls situation, like a deployed combat, not black rolls as in like domestic counterterrorism where you're like SWAT team style just fighting through a house. But if we're in an outdoor sort of situation, I'm only carrying a pistol in case I have to go into a small space. And I've got 18 rounds in this one magazine, and I've got another one, but I've got it acting as a counterweight to my night vision goggles on my helmet. It's not something I can get off real quick, right? Like if I need to go to a second magazine on my pistol, things have gone fucking bad. So I am not practicing changing magazines. For you, who's going to turn up to the target line here and you know the scenario, you know how it's going to play out, you know exactly how many bullets you're going to fire at certain things and you've been allocated bullets, you can change magazines as often as you like. You can calculate that shit. But that is not how it works in the real world. And I think that there's and he was really good about it. He was like, oh yeah, cool. I hadn't thought about that. Cause I was like, mate, everything I carry, I'm carrying for a long period of time. And, you know, I talk about like most of the time when you're going on a gig, especially if you're going by helicopter, you kind of need to know what you weigh before you go. And most of the time when I was rolling out the door, I weighed 147 kilos and only 90 kilos of that was me. The rest is my ammunition, my water, my body armor, my helmet, all that kind of shit. So like every bullet you take adds up. And so I'm like, hey man, I'm not carrying 5 pistol magazines. So I got nowhere to put those. I'm not fucking lugging those around. That's not, I got a bunch of my long gun ammo because I'm going to go through a lot of that, but I'm not going through a lot of pistol ammo. If it gets to the point where I'm having to change magazines on my pistol, I'm probably going to keep one of those rounds for myself because that is a fucking disaster at that point, right? He was good about it. He was like, yeah, cool, got it. No worries, understand, modify the drill. But there's a big comparison in that to a lot of the dog training that we see. And this is why I get big mad about people who want to ban equipment and they're only involved in a narrow slice of the industry. And I get like, hey, but you don't know what I do. You can't do what I do. You don't know what I do. So who are you to tell me what tools I can use along the way? That's what really worries me when you see people giving advice way outside of their lane. And it's one thing to give advice. We're all guilty of that. We all think we know more than we do. Like it's fine to give advice. But to say, no, I want one of the critical tools that you rely on to be able to safely and effectively do your job without knowing what your job is, without any capacity to do it, I want that tool banned. I think the moment you say that, you've lost your credibility and you're now a ridiculous person. And I think that the credibility bleeds back. Like you've got no credibility in the space that you're talking outside of that you don't understand. And because of the authority with which you're saying it, that resembles the authority that which you're talking about the thing that you are claiming to be an expert at. So I have no choice now but to extrapolate that across and go, you don't actually know that as well, because you're talking with authority about something you don't know anything about. And I can't tell the difference between your posture, demeanor, body language when you're speaking total fucking nonsense and when you're talking about the thing that you claim to be an expert at. So I have to assume that you're not an expert at that other thing as well, that you're probably lying a bunch in that space. That's of concern.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it, mate.
Oh, dear. All right. Hey, one thing I wanted to ask you, we started talking about that fucking dog. How many dogs do you reckon you've seen in your life that are true, proper, apex, dominant dogs like that? How many do you reckon you've seen in your life, like with your own eyes?
I've probably seen, like that dog, I've probably seen about half a dozen.
Yeah, there's not, like Mother Nature doesn't make many of them, hey?
Not like that. Like where dogs are taking a knee to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that scenario, like it almost looks AI because looking at the way all of the other dogs are just scattering out of his path. Not that he's doing anything, but just the magnificent way that he carries himself. Like I've seen people like that as well. I've seen when, like the influence of when a real, that it's a really capable person walks into a room, how all eyes are on that person. I remember being involved in a security job once. I knew when somebody walked in the room that was an important character because I knew everybody in the bar changed, everybody in the room changed. And the guy sort of came over and had a talk and he said, "Oh, can we talk?" And I said, "Yeah, man, let's talk." And he said, "Listen, I'm not here to big note myself." He goes, "I've got a reputation in this area." He said, "But this is my pub where I come to get away from people and just relax and drink. I'm not here to cause you any mischief or any harm. I don't want any special treatment. I don't come here to fuck things up or bring problems." And I said, "Appreciate that, man. Thanks for letting me know." And he goes, "Respect given is respect earned." And I said, "Thanks, man." And he goes, "So if I'm here," and he goes, "no matter what anyone comes up and tells you, people like to make up stories and stuff like that. But I saw him change the characteristics and the dynamics of the room immediately when he came in." And yeah, you don't see that a lot with a lot of people and you don't see that a lot with a lot of dogs. But when you do, you should pay attention to what's going on because there is a capability there that you're unaware of and, to assume otherwise could cause a problem for yourself.
Yeah, I reckon I've only seen 2 in my life that I can think of. One, like a Mallee, like a proper, he thought of himself as a lion. And another one was this like mongrel Bitzer, looked like a cavoodle that was at a daycare that I was working at. There was nothing impressive about the dog physically, but he had that I am the boss. It was an aura about him and it was understood by all the others. But that was my curiosity with that dog because it's one thing to carry yourself with a level of dominance or, that is observable to strangers around you. But it's another thing to have dogs fucking flinch when you walk past, right? So that's what makes me think there's got to be an interesting backstory to that dog. He doesn't command that level of respect without having done something to earn it. And I would love to understand how that all came to be.
The most significant, memorable one for me was a Jack Russell. And it was a smaller group of dogs, but it was still in a rescue sort of facility. And when this dog came out, he commanded the attention of all the dogs in the area. So there was probably I would say there's probably about a dozen dogs in there. And when that little Jack Russell came out, all the dogs' eyes were on him and they were dividing their attention around him. I asked the lady at the time, I said, "Wow, he's got some presence." She said, "Yeah, he's been here for a long time." And she said, "He's just got this real dominant characteristic about him." And I said, "What's his backstory?" And she said, "We just found him on the road one day and he came in here." And I said, "Has he gotten any significant fights?" And she said, "Only with one dog. Like I thought it wasn't going to go his way because the dog was bigger than him." And he said, "But he bested the dog and put it in its place." And she said, "He's a real problem solver." She said, having him here corrects any imbalances that are in place. And I thought that is a fucking interesting observation. And I wish I had more time to sort of study him and watch what was going on. But I wasn't really paying a lot of attention to it other than just thinking, what a cool little dog. But I really wish that I had the mindset I have now where I would have probably gone back and taken notes and videoed the dog and educated other people on what I was actually seeing as well. Those sort of things are fascinating social media discussions other than the other brain rot shit that's going on at the moment. Those sort of things are more important to talk about and more important to study and think on and press on and understand why this happens in the role of dogdom and even, in the domestication of dogs, why it's important and why it does create a stabilized environment when it works well.
Yeah, I would like to understand the mechanism behind that. I think that would be very interesting science to understand what it is a dog can do to carry itself with that much presence that it doesn't need to invoke any violence, that it just dominates all the other dogs. Like Juco 2 is sort of this mythological Malinois. There's a lot of debate about his bloodline and blah, blah, blah. And it's a long time ago, but the accounts of him are quite interesting, right? Like at the club, at KMPV clubs, it's pretty common that they stake out the young dogs and they all watch the older dogs work and they should be all in the back tie, losing their mind, wanting to get involved. Apparently when Juco would work, no dog would put tension into their back tie. They were like, no, that's his, he's working. I don't want to be confused as a competitor for his resource. So stuff like that, he never was, well, the accounts, I don't know, but the accounts don't say anything about him fighting other dogs, but that also other dogs wouldn't even pull into the back tie to get something that he had. They just knew no, you don't fuck with him. So what causes that would be an interesting thing to study. But you can't because according to science, it doesn't exist.
So before we do tie up, you being you and being, like you've been around a lot of alpha type people before, has there ever been anybody that you've sort of looked at and measured them up and thought, oh, that person's just got presence. I really wouldn't like to press my luck with them.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
As have I.
But
I've looked at people and there's certain people that I just know there's a look to them and a characteristic about them where you've just thought that person would probably fuck you up in a situation.
Yeah, but so like the people who I know are the most capable, there's one person who comes to mind who is someone who I would never, ever say no to, right? But he would never ask anything. You would never in a million years pick. And he's such an easygoing guy. It's not until you cross the line and the line is buried.
But you're describing true dominance. You're describing exactly what dominance is because it serves a purpose in diffusing.
That's right. But he's not an overtly dominant guy. Like you would never in a group of people, he's never the one in charge. He's never like a loud spoken. He's not observably a leader in any capacity and he doesn't control the space. But
you know it, your DNA knows it. Like that's what I'm saying is that's what true dominance is. There's a lot of people who act dominant and, like it's a facade and it's a performance and so forth. And they're often people who become quite easily aggressive too. Like that's the wrong type of character that I'm talking about.
Yeah, that facade is easy.
Yeah. I'm talking about real known characteristics where, like even the cells in your body line that person up and think, no. And that's a real
so there's
Australian.
Definitely,
Nah.
I've known a few people. I know a few people who you look at and you go like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm in danger around you, even though they're really nice and whatever. But then I know a couple who are like, you have no idea. And I've sort of knowing who they are, what they're capable of and seen them doing it. I've even been in situations where I've had to go to say to people like, I wouldn't push any further if I were you. Like I remember with one guy, I remember having to say to a dude one time, I was like, hey man, I would just leave that. Hey, I wouldn't push that because you're about to cross a line that you may not get back across. And I know it doesn't look like, I know he looks like a very normal person and he looks like a wonderful, nice guy and he is. And I would like to keep it that way because once you cross a line, he's going to put a mask on that I've only seen him wear a few times. And frankly, I'd fucking rather not ever see it again. So please wind it back.
Yep.
Anyway, all right, I'm going to do the wrap up.
Yep, I'm going to go off and put liquid paper on a bee. Just part of my prestige worldwide conspiracy.
Yep. Fair enough. All right, that's it for another episode of the Canine Paradigm. As always, if you like what you hear, like, rate, share, subscribe. Do that from whatever subscription service you download us from, and then go to another one and do that there. They don't check. You're allowed to do it. You can do whatever you want. In fact, you can do anything you want. You just have to deal with the consequences. If you want to support us, the very best way to do that is to jump into Patreon. Couple bucks a month will get you giant backlog of information as well as new stuff going forward. And there's a bunch of different tiers. We've never put the prices up on any of that. So
I know, but the prices go up on all our bills, like our fucking bills, gut wrenching sometimes. Yeah. Fucking.
But anyway, that's the cost of doing business. But if you want to help us do that, you can jump into Patreon. You give us a few bucks, we'll give you some giant backlog of content and new stuff going forward. There's different tiers you could get in there. You can support us at the higher tiers or, anything above $10 a month gets you access to the live Q&A with me, as well as I put discounts to courses and other sorts of information, stuff like that in there. So jump in there if you want to check that out. Another cool way to support the show would be jump into Spring. There's links in the show notes. You can get yourself some t-shirts or wall tapestries or any other cool merch of ours.
Not water bottles, not underwear, but definitely tapestry.
No water bottles, no underwear, no socks.
Yep.
But it's one of the coolest things when you go to an event and you see someone wearing our stuff.
Love it.
The cool story showing me dog with
flattering.
Katrina's story is without a doubt the most popular one. I see that around the most.
It's amazing.
Yeah. If you want to get in touch with us, the best way to do that is to jump in the Facebook discussion groups. Like a lot of good conversations happening in there. Just don't be a dickhead. That's the only rule that we have. And if you want to get in touch with us directly, you can shoot us an email. We are info@thecanineparadigm.com. Love you all. Goodbye.